Thank you very much for having me, Dan. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, absolutely. You should be able to.
Hello, to people who are watching and people who may be watching later. I'm Lynn Turkstra. I am a faculty member at McMaster University in Canada, where I have been for the last 7 years or so. So I'm going to talk about some research that we started when I was at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and based on even some earlier work that we did, and a study that we're actually getting ready to wrap up in the next month. So this will be my first time to talk a little bit about the results of that study. So again, thanks for being here. So I'm sharing information here on behalf of our research team. So I want to make sure that I mention them. Melissa Duff, who's the top person in the middle, is at Vanderbilt University, and next to her is Bilge Mutlu, who's in Wisconsin. He's in computer science. Catalina Toma is the next one. She's in communication studies. And below are four students who've done a ton of work on this project: Yashin Hu, Hajin Lim, who is now at University of South Korea, my PhD student, Lisa Kakange, and my former master's student, Rehana Ahmadi. And there's been so many people working on this. So I know sometimes people put acknowledgements at the end, but then they kind of get forgotten. So this is a lot of really great people and students. Also, as we were talking about just before this, McKay Solberg and Justine Hamilton and I have a book on cognitive rehabilitation methods that came out last year. I'm always laughing when I say it as a disclosure because we will never make money on that book. So even if I promote it to everyone, uh, when you publish a book, it's the labor of love. It's never about money, unless it was like a murder mystery. I haven't tried that. Okay, so the reason we did this study that I'm going to talk to you about is, and I try not to have a lot of words on slides, but this one has a lot of words. So we did all this research for years, trying to understand the challenges some people with brain injury have in reading emotions in other people and just reading other people's minds, doing that mind reading in a social situation. So we did that for a long time, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But last time we were thinking about what direction to go for research, we wanted to do something that would translate all that into helping people now. So instead of doing a lot of work trying to understand a problem and maybe helping people in the future, we wanted to do something that would help people in the present. So we thought, what if we take all that we've learned about challenges people with brain injury have in social situations, and we use that to modify social media platforms so that people with brain injury can access social media. So about social media, I mean, everybody knows about it. It's become integral to social life around the world. Just last year in the US, 175 million people. So if you think about it, it's huge. And although Dan and many others, including me, have a lot of reservations about social media use in general and for people with brain injury, there are lots of benefits. So there's lots of research showing, for example, that people have relationship benefits. They can stay in touch with your family members. You feel more included, even if you live somewhere remote. And that's one of the big benefits, is that you don't have to be physically near people. You can be friends with people and keep up with them and communicate with them at a distance, even if you don't have transportation to get to see them. So there are lots of benefits to being part of that world. The biggest reason for us was that everyone has a right to choose whether they want to participate in this world or not. And there shouldn't be barriers to anyone from participating. And so we thought it was important that everyone have the option of joining social media. So Liz Brunner is a researcher in Australia who has done many studies now looking at barriers to social media participation. And what she's done is asked a lot of people with brain injury, what do you use, for example, Twitter? Why do you use it, formerly known as Twitter? Um, so so she had a lot. So we already came into this knowing that people with brain injury as a group reported some barriers to participating in. And TBI is an international problem. So social media is used internationally. TBI is a problem internationally. That means there's lots of people who might want to be part of that world and are really having a lot of challenges. So that's where we got our motivation for doing the research. So what we asked was, what can we do to increase access for everyone? So the first thing we knew was that you all know is that many people with brain injury, when it's moderate to severe, especially, have challenges with things like executive function, including controlling where your attention goes, holding a lot of things in working memory, and learning, and also challenges in social thinking. And that's what we've done most of our work on, is social cognition. And for people with moderate to severe.
I wanted to ask, what do you
Oh,
mean by
Randy,
the social thinking?
cognition.
What do you mean by that?
Awesome question, Randy. I think I have a slide on that next.
Oh, okay.
And I'll give these to Dan too. So hold on a second. Here we go. I'll back up after I show you this one. So I use the term social cognition or social thinking. Social thinking is a common term that you see in the literature. So these researchers, Beer and Oxner, defined social cognition back in 2006 as cognitive processes we use to decode and encode the social world. I do not find that helpful, because it's like, what are those processes? What is encode? What is decode? What does it mean? So here's the breakdown. It's the kind of thinking you use to understand other people's thoughts. So the first is to read their emotions from their facial expressions. The second is to make guesses about or predictions about what you think someone is thinking. And that's called theory of mind. So that's where we've done most of our work, is we've done a lot of research trying to see where there are challenges for people with brain injury in reading other people. So I'm a speech language pathologist. The tradition in my field was that the challenges people have socially in brain injury are because they don't know the right thing to do. And so a huge change when we started this was to say, yeah, people know the right thing to do. They just can't always read in the moment whether that's the right time to do it. So it's not a knowledge problem. And that has really big implications for treatment, because if you think it's a knowledge problem, you're going to explain. So for you to get a joke, you have to do blah, blah, blah. But if you know exactly what it means to get a joke, you just can't pick it up in the moment. That's a different kind of treatment. And in our books, it's mostly treating the other person to explain better. Anyway, the second part of social cognition that Randy and Dan were talking about just before we started was this idea of empathy and being in touch with your own feelings. So how you think about feeling and connecting your own feelings with other people. I am not talking about that today. The third part is social, and Dawn Newman's going to be talking about that coming up. The third part, which I'm also not talking about, is social knowledge. By and large, unless a person is injured very, very young and has a very severe brain injury, they know the right thing to do. So social knowledge hasn't really been a challenge in brain injury. So what I'm talking about is this. How do you, when I say we're thinking about social thinking, what we're thinking about is really reading cues, reading other people's social cues. Does that help, Randy?
Yeah, unfortunately, more than I would like it, but go ahead.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question about that? Because those three categories, to distinguish them and tease them out, must be difficult because they're all very intertwined. And I know, for me, I've been working on the understanding myself and dealing with my emotions, because not having emotions was easier than having them. But I could just see how this is also complicatedly interconnected.
It absolutely is. And I'm going to
Yeah.
show you some pictures of how we've tried to take pieces out and like test that piece
Cool, cool.
to see. Yeah, that's a great point. So just to back up, So we had done this a bunch of previous studies. We published a bunch of papers. And I think I talked about it last time I was joining this webinar series. So basically what we found is that it's not everybody with a brain injury, but there, as a group, people with brain injury were less accurate in recognizing social cues. And we saw them in different ways, in writing, or in even like social cues in writing, or emotions on faces of people, or trying to infer what someone else was thinking. So we had seen all of that in our previous work. And I'm going to just go past this one. So this is how, to get to your point, Dan, about it being complex. So if we want to know, is it just that you have trouble reading emotions on a face? Forget the feeling part, the knowledge part, the whatever. So we might show someone pictures like this and ask, here's some emotions: happy, sad, angry, disgusted, afraid. Which do you think this is? And have people choose that. And what we found from that is, in general, again, I don't want to make a general statement about people with brain injury because everyone's different. But there were people in the group of adults with brain injury who had some trouble overall with this, but it was really the emotions that are hard for everyone. So it's hard for people to tell the difference between fear and surprise. So surprise and fear look very similar on someone's face. And so it's hard to tell the difference. So for some people with brain injury, it was just harder. We're happy, everyone can tell happy. So that's not a problem. But brain injury, no brain injury, everyone could tell happy. So there were some challenges, but it wasn't really as big a challenge in the basic stuff as one might have thought. Then we thought, well, maybe it's timing, so maybe you just have to be, emotions are so fast on someone's face. So maybe the challenge is, if you have a brain injury and you're not thinking quite as fast, or you're paying attention somewhere else, maybe you miss it. So it's a speed thing. So we use these morphs. This is called a morph image. So what you do is you would play this and say, pause it here. What emotion is that? Then, we have it a little bit more. What emotion is that? So is it that you need the whole thing? Or we'd say, decide as quickly as you can what emotion this is, to see if speed is the problem. And I'll tell you, the short answer is not really. I was wrong a lot. The other thing, another question we had is, maybe the issue is attention. So when someone's talking to you, usually you'd be watching their face to see their emotions. But maybe some people with brain injury are distractible. So maybe you're just looking in the wrong place. So we did we created this test where your interpretation depended on seeing the whole thing. So, like, for example, here, if anyone had to guess what emotion that person was feeling, what would you say?
Looks like he's playing soccer. Maybe why?
Excited or
Excited.
yeah, or like celebrating something.
It's amazing that you guys know that, because most people would say angry, because it's kind of, he has a bit of see the eyebrows going down. That's an angry thing.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of like he's angry because somebody missed the goal or something like that.
Yeah.
He's actually happy. So he's happy and proud because the team won. So it's,
but I don't know that I don't know that you get that just by looking at his face. When you enlarge the picture that you have now, it comes off very different.
Exactly. See, so that was our point. So we were testing.
There you go.
Thank you very much. You have just proved my point. So what we were saying is,
okay.
yes, so you did get an A.
Yeah.
So what we thought was, maybe that, so if you didn't take the context into account, you wouldn't change your answer.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So if you changed your answer, that means you're looking at the whole context, which means if for some reason you missed that emotion, it's not because you had an attention problem, it's something else. So yeah, so that it turned out that people with brain injury gave really different answers on this that we're still trying to sort out. A lot of times it was second guessing yourself. So someone would say, like for this face, I think he's angry, no, happy, no, surprised. So there were double the number of that kind of answer in the brain injury group. So was it like people just were not confident in their answers or not sure? And then we use things like this where we would say, here's a whole scene. What do you think is happening? And we would ask people. Now, you guys are a little bit out of the age range for this picture, I will just say, because it's high school students. And it turns out adults are not as good as high school students at figuring this kind of picture out. So it kind of needs to be your age group. But so what would you think? What do you think is happening here if you had to guess?
I have no idea.
You mean the emotion, or do you mean what is happening in
the whole scene?
Yeah, the setting looks like a classroom, so some sort of education.
I don't know. It looks like they're acting like a scene in a play or something.
This is what I mean about adults not really getting it. So in this picture, this guy, this young man, you can actually do a visual inference here. He's holding hands with this girl. You can see his hands going that way and her hands going. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but this young woman on the left here is irritated because this young man in the middle has picked the girl on the right over her. And the girl on the right is looking smug. The young man in the middle is looking guilty or sheepish. And the girl on the left is looking irritated. And so there's a lot happening in this picture to pull together. And so that's another thing we looked at. And that's a place where some people with brain injury had challenges pulling it all together. So yeah, so these were all things that we had seen in previous studies. This is a writing example. So if I showed you these two sentences, I'm watching the BBA webinar with these people, I'm watching the BBA webinar with those people, which sentence sounds like the person likes the people more?
A.
Right? Perfect.
Yeah.
So that is a social cue in text, that those is wording we use to signal to people that we like or we don't like something. So see, you guys all got it. And we actually found almost very, very, very little problems in people with brain injury with that type of stuff as well. Here's another one. So I'm like, I don't mean to be doing this experiment with you all.
No,
this isn't
enjoyable.
Oh, good. This is another one that it was a student, Haley Drusang, who did this as an undergrad. I thought it was really clever. Oh gosh, that it would help if hold on, I have to fix my typo. That is not good. I'm going to reshare. Sorry to be a perfectionist, but I spelled criticize wrong and that is not good. Okay. So if I say to you, Sophia criticized Javier because, who do you think is the guilty party in that sentence? Is it Sophia or Javier? Actually, let me just ask you to finish the sentence. Sophia criticized Javier because, can someone just volunteer something that could go?
He didn't like what he was doing.
Okay, because she didn't like what he was doing. So it's a him problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I say Camila scared Christian because
it was funny.
It was funny, right? That's a her. So typically that's a her problem. She scared him.
I'm not sure if I get your point here.
I know it's
I'm not, what is the point of this? I don't quite get it.
Top one, Sophia's not at fault, or the first person is not at fault, and the second one, Camila's at fault. But what is the point?
So the thing is, some verbs tend to make you think it's the fault of the recipient, and some verbs tend to make you think it's the fault of the person who's doing it. So like if I say,
Wow.
I really like you, then that's about me. But if I say, I'm annoyed at you, that's like it's about you. It's something you did. You're the agent in that sentence. And it's a really subtle thing
Interesting.
in the English language, that some verbs put sort of the action on the person before the verb and some on the person after. So criticized is one of those verbs that puts the action on the, you did it. It's something you did. I criticize you because it's something you did, versus I scared you because of something I did that scared you.
Right. I always blame it on myself.
Right. So
And,
Yeah, right,
and
right.
that second sentence, though, could be Camilla scared Christian because she wanted him to know that doing what he did was dangerous. So it could be used as the same as the top one.
although it's still Camilla who wants to know, right?
Wants to know. I mean, she's trying to teach him a lesson in my second
Right.
scenario.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. So she's still, she wants him to know. It's still Camilla who's doing the teaching of the lesson, right?
Because of
So,
him,
yeah, because
not
of him.
because of her being a problem. I mean, because the problem is contextual and each person might think the other is a problem.
Right. So yes. So this is obviously, it's a complex kind of a task. But what Haley did was she asked people with and without brain injury just to finish the sentence. And what she found was that people without brain injury would follow kind of the conventional rule that the words that people have already studied for years in English that put the action on the first person, people without brain injury did the same thing. But people with brain injury tended to be kind of at chance about who they thought the action was about. So it would be like Sophia criticized Javier because she was just a really cranky person. And that's a Sophia problem.
This is I gotta tell you, I think this is really hitting home for me because whatever the first decade, whatever it was, I don't remember. Um, I was going to these conferences thinking that I was okay, and I found myself, I meet somebody in a conversation, having a conversation, and it was as though I was apologizing, letting them know about my head injury in the context of sort of apologizing if I did anything off color without even knowing if I did. I mean, that's sort of what you're talking about here, isn't it?
So it's well, in this case we're talking about it in writing, but I think it's this, it sounds similar in that it's like you sort of make a decision about this is all a me thing, not a you thing. Or the
Yeah.
other way, or the other way around. So we had one gentleman in the study with a brain injury who had clearly just gone through a bad divorce. So everything he said was the female name's fault. It didn't matter if that one came first or second.
Right.
Everything was that person's fault. So he was just kind of stuck on that.
Well, that was emotionally driven, I would think.
It was emotionally driven, but it can lead to some social challenges because other people might not be seeing it that way.
Right.
So yeah, so we had, these are like I said, these are subtle challenges. So
is it okay if I ask a specific question about that? Because of that last one, I'm just wondering, like this, you're saying this goes both directions, right? Not if the brain injured person just hears the sentence, but maybe if the brain injured person delivers the sentence, the receiver would misperceive what the brain injured person was thinking quite reasonably or possibly based on your research because they wouldn't even use the words in the same way, maybe.
I think, thank you for asking that question, Nancy. I think I'm speculating because we didn't have people do it in conversations. But I would think if I said to you, if I said that sentence, oh, Sophia criticized Javier, maybe I mean it's because Sophia is really a critical person. And I think you understand that too. But you wouldn't think that because you're used to it being about Javier if he comes second. So you might miss my meaning.
Yes.
Because so does that sound like kind of what you were saying?
Yeah, because I mean, like me personally, I say things and I know what I mean, but others tell me I said something different.
Yeah.
So it would be like that because
I have a
Yeah.
they
feeling
came
that's
up with
pretty
a different
common.
meaning than
I
I
have a
had when
feeling
I
that's
delivered
very
it.
common, Nancy.
What'd you say?
I think that I tend to think that that's pretty common among a brain injured group.
Ah,
That's what I would think. I mean, I think that was true for me to some extent or other. I don't know to what extent, but I would think that the misunderstanding, miscommunications, and how things are interpreted by the sender or the receiver, one being injured, um, I would think that that probably happens a lot.
Well, I'd
Mhm.
say no doubt because the commonality is something that all the brain injury people that I've spoken to talk about. And um, just to add to what Nancy was saying, that this is more breaking down the why that is. And
Mm.
I also think with the last example and with this example, I am thinking I have a process happening. I'm aware of it. It's in my mind, but then I'm like usually wrong, especially with faces. And like my wife says, I'm bad at that and other things. And I can see, oh, okay, I was having a process happening. I was trying to interpret it, but I wasn't doing it the same way as the unbrain injured. So then
Mm.
I don't know. We're getting kind of into a complicated discussion about this, and yeah, but yeah, thank you both for asking those questions because it's like there's a lot to break down here.
I think this whole
Yes.
thing is very complicated.
Oh my
Fundamental.
gosh, it's so
Yeah.
complicated. I mean, brain
Yeah,
injury is complicated. Social interactions are complicated.
right.
Thinking is complicated. Sometimes I wish I had just studied verbs. It would have been, or speech production or something that's more
Does a
straightforward.
lot of this come from damage to the prefrontal cortex?
So I will park that for the moment, Randy, if that's okay,
Okay.
because I think we could have a whole other talk on whether that is something that you can link to one specific part of the brain. So my short answer would be maybe.
You should have been a lawyer.
Yeah, right, or a politician.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of people have tried to make that direct connection. So, but your brain's so integrated that that's as
Right.
complicated as everything else. So, I've seen people with these challenges who don't have frontal lobe lesions, and I've
I
seen
would say
people with
no. I
frontal
would
lobe.
say sorry. I would say not necessarily or no.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
not necessarily. There's a good answer.
Okay.
So the take home from the studies we did was that if we made the task straightforward and it didn't have a big memory load, people with brain injury were as accurate as peers. But if we got into these subtle things, if we did things that are more subtle, we started to see some challenges. So, like I said, our goal was to figure out how to help. And so what we did was we made these Chrome, the browser Chrome, we made Chrome extensions that modify the way Facebook looks to address some of the challenges that I just talked about. And I'm going to just walk you quickly through. I want to make sure we have time for more discussion at the end. So I'm going to go pretty quickly through the studies that we did. So first, we asked people with brain injury, what social media platform are you using? How often? Is it helping? Do you stay in touch with friends that way? What are your frustrations? So we did that. We found most people were using Facebook. So we picked Facebook. And it's the most popular one around the world. So we thought, well, we'll start with Facebook. Second, we started coming up with ideas of what we could do to Facebook. For example, we thought, what if don't look too closely at this. We didn't end up doing it. But the idea was, oh, if people can't remember what they posted, maybe you could click on something and it would show you all the posts that were related to that. So we had these ideas. We had ideas of what we were going to do to modify Facebook. Then we did this study with people with brain injury, and we had them think through, how would you like Facebook to look? So we did this usability study, and people sketched out ideas. They drew out what they wanted. So then we had more ideas. So then we went back to people with, now we know it's Facebook. So now we went back to people with brain injury and said, what do you think about Facebook? These are the things people use it for. They broadcast their news. They get feedback, meaning people like them or, comment or put hearts or whatever in Facebook. You use it to observe, kind of what people are doing. Some people are really Facebook observers, or you yourself give thumbs up or hearts as feedback. And a lot of people talk about Facebook as social comparison. And I will say one comment about this that I had not thought of at all, that was really, really striking, that came out of that step 4 study. I did not appreciate that a person with a brain injury might be seeing their pre-injury self on Facebook from before, because they were Facebook users before. And that, for example, when Facebook pops up a memory from 5 years ago, that might be a really emotionally heavy experience for a person, right? I was thinking like people say social comparison, they mean like teenagers. Well, teenagers don't use Facebook, but like you're looking and saying, oh, that person's having more fun than I'm having. And I thought, well, for people with brain injury, maybe it's like, well, my trajectory has been different than my friends, so I'm watching what they're doing and I'm doing different things. Is that difficult, or am I glad about it? I wasn't thinking about you and your previous self.
Right. What is lost in me, if I just can say that. And it's like,
say that again.
I took a lot of my Facebook photos away. And so I lost a lot of memories, and my mind desires to have those. But it can be different for each person.
Thank you for sharing that, Nick. That is so, thank you. That is really a really moving comment to share. Yeah. So we asked people, this is what the things that people said. And I put these quotes up because they're linking exactly to what we created. This person said, I want to see things based on my mood. If I'm happy, I don't want to see posts about sad things. Don't make me sad. We actually created a filter that only shows you happy posts. This person underneath that said, my spelling is bad, so I want to have a spell check. We actually created a spell and grammar check. This person underneath them said, too much of that, too many videos, keeps going and going, it's overwhelming. We created a filter so you can just focus on the main story. This person on the right said, I guess self-conscious. Like, what if the person wrote something and I didn't understand it? What if they were trying to be funny and I didn't get the joke? We used this new sentiment analysis software. It's an AI program that actually will give you, this is the general tone of this message. It's happy, it's sad.
Likelihood of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last one down here is someone said, I wish I could pick what I saw. So like there's marketplace. I don't want to see marketplace. I don't want to do fundraisers. I don't want to have groups. I want to pick exactly what I want to see. And these are the 5 Chrome extensions that we made. So that's called filter mode. That's a writing aid. This is focus mode. This is an interpretation aid. And this is customization. And the way it works, I'm actually going to skip this. This is just more data showing that we showed them to people and we asked them what they thought about it, and that helped. Then we worked again with people with brain injury to figure out how to design the Chrome extensions. We got a lot of feedback. This was when we did our focus group and people were writing what they wanted it to look like. So if you're going to filter, this is what I want. I want to click for my post. So we did that. And then I put here step 7 to 50, which is you try it, Facebook changes something on the back end, it doesn't work anymore, you try it again, or you try it, it's buggy, or you try, like the computer science team on this has been amazing. The students and Bill Gamutl's lab are amazing. So we did like so many iterations And then we gave it to experts. So we found 5 speech pathologists. We did 8 adults with TBI who tried them out, gave it feedback. We revised again. Then we gave it to 5 speech pathologists who worked with people with brain injury who want to be on social media. And we said, would these help based on your patients? And then we went back and we revised again. I put 30 more steps, back to the drawing board, more iterations and more iterations. And then we ended up with this toolkit. And so basically it's blurry here. I think I have them. So this is an overview. So this is focus. So all you see is the one post. There's not all that other stuff. The only thing we can't get rid of in Facebook is ads, because they don't, their algorithms don't let you get rid of ads. So this would be just the post and maybe an ad underneath it, but you don't have there's all kinds of stuff on the screen. You don't have it. This is I think this is wait. Let me look, I can't tell which one this is. Oh, this might also be focused. So there's no stuff over here. There's no stuff over here. You're seeing this. Oops, I forgot about that. That was a demo. This is a demo video. I'll skip that in the interest of time too. This is customization, where you choose what do you want to see on the left and the right. So like here, this is find friends, communities, marketplace. You can actually check which one of those you want to see and it'll block the rest. And then it'll like block this whole right side. The other thing that's really nice is that Facebook, I didn't realize this, Facebook shuffles your post order. So if you're on it, you might see something from 2 minutes ago and then 2 weeks ago. And it's really frustrating because you can't tell when something, like you don't see a story. And if you've responded before, it's still there. It's really annoying. And so they created an algorithm that makes it chronological so that your feed is always coming in chronological order. So that was really great. You can also block, like if you just want to see videos or you don't want to see videos, and the sentiment, if you only want to see positive posts and you don't want to see negative, because we have this sentiment analyzer running in the background and it will try and figure out, yeah. And this one is filter. Oh, this is the filter one that has a positive sentiment. Whoops, another demo that I'm not going to show you. I wanted to get to this one because it gets kind of to what we were talking about with being unsure of what you say. So you would draft your post and then you click the analyze button and it will tell you, it checks your grammar and spelling, and then it does something called a toxicity check. So if there's anything in your message that's likely to make someone really angry, there are keywords that AI searches for that are, say, I don't know, that are just toxic negative comments. It will actually highlight. I want to emphasize that it doesn't change anything. It just gives you feedback. So you could choose to ignore it. And then it does an emotion and tone check that says your message is generally positive or your message is generally negative. And then you can go back and edit and it will tell you again, like you just rerun it. The last thing it does is a privacy setting, because for a lot of Facebook users, you kind of forget, am I sending this to the whole planet or just my friends? So it does a last step to say, this is who you're sending it to. And then it does the same on the receiving end. So you see somebody else's post here, you click the analyze button and it will tell you the emotion and tone of their post. So it pops up.
That would help with accessibility.
Well, see, the thing is, we think these are good for everyone.
Right.
Like anything that's, if you look, so there's you might know there's international guidelines for web content and web content accessibility, the W3C guidelines, but they're focused on vision, because I think that's the easier one to manage. The cognitive accessibility, there's some newish guidelines, but they're not based on any data. So a student wrote a paper that we just withdrew from the journal because it took them 14 months and they still can't find a reviewer for the article. But she looked in all the research literature to see, has anyone actually tested, my working memory is this, therefore this is how much stuff I should have on the screen.
Right.
Or I have, if a person has this kind of attention, this is how you design the user interface. We can't find anything like that out there. And it's possible that these companies are doing it internally and not sharing because they have accessibility offices.
Right. Non-disclosure agreements.
Exactly. So we aren't privy to that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a former student who's been working with Google, and he asked them, actually, my brother's also working with Google, and he asked them too. And they said, oh yeah, here's the link to the office doing that. And I looked at the link and it's the same stuff. It's mostly like vision and physical. You want things to be physically accessible. So what I would love is,
but sometimes to develop the technology, it's a complicated question.
It's very complicated, but there are a lot of people who would benefit, and we have an aging population.
True.
Right. So I feel like older adults would benefit. So my dream was that someone at Facebook or somewhere will see all the stuff that we're publishing and just take it and do it themselves.
Right. Yeah, I work the same way too, I think.
Yeah.
It's
Whoops.
I think also the distinctions of looking at I don't know the words, but looking at attention and trying to see how this type of software is used, looking at what are the other distinctions you made. The emotional stuff for me has been, the thing on my radar for the last several years, because if I get so triggered by it, I don't even want to deal with it. But to have those distinctions, which are known, every brain injury person I met is aware of those kinds of problems within themselves, maybe not at first, but over time. And then so to have them be aware that we are, or people need that is it's a good first step, because otherwise they're not going to think about it necessarily.
Right. I don't think they think about it the way we do, at least.
Not at all.
Like they think, oh, vocabulary. Like I think that's what I see is they'll say, oh, don't have too much writing on the page, but that's not it. And, when you're using any, I was a part of a grant that designed an app years ago. And like, it's a lot of memory, like when you have to flip through pages, like virtual pages in an app. So there's a whole bunch of stuff like that. Like people who we interviewed with TBI were saying things like the instructions aren't very good. Like one of the things and sorry, I don't want to go on a tangent on this because it drives me buggy, but one of the things from W3C is that every platform, every web page should have the logout in the same place. But every single app you use puts the logout somewhere else, like sign in, logout. Everybody puts it somewhere else. And I get that everyone needs to be special and, proprietary, but for heaven's sakes, can't everybody just make the logout look exactly the same? Like that is not rocket science, but it's a free market, which I understand. So everyone was supposed to be using those recommendations by 2023, but it's still not happening.
Well, I was going to ask that for the installation of this toolkit, can a brain injured person just get it on their computer by themselves? Same with logout, same with sign in, same with passwords, same with all the features of it. Because I think for some people it's not a problem; they are able to use it. For people that it is a problem, it becomes a major barrier.
So that's a perfect segue, Dan, to the step we're just finishing. So we have 40 people with brain injury who have been using these for a month. And so they basically use one thing like the focus mode for 3 days, then they do a questionnaire, then they go back. So I would say we have one in-person meeting where we hand over a Chromebook to the person, and then they're on their own. And it has not been that difficult. So there is like there's like a 15-minute install at the beginning that we do with the person. And then every time they change, it's like 5 minutes. So I think using the things that we built is actually pretty straightforward, but I can let you know that better in a month because we haven't got all the feedback from people. I'm watching it because the comments are coming in from all these users. So I'm seeing a lot of people saying this is really helpful, or this is really buggy, it's not working on my Chromebook or something like that. So yeah, so we have 10 people in Canada and 30 people in Nashville. who are just wrapping up their month of using it to let us know. And we're collecting a whole bunch of information about how long they're on Facebook and how often they ask for help, how many times they post, how many posts they read. We don't see any content that people, people are doing, it's private, but we are seeing like just time, on or off Facebook. So yeah. So hopefully I'll be able to tell you. Yeah.
You should check out the content of the Facebook TBI support groups, because for me, that stuff has been very helpful. Like, I don't like social media, but I do find those groups helpful. And it's amazing to see the discussions and what's the norm for those groups of people, because that is one big benefit of the Facebook groups that are out there.
But that's private.
I know. Well,
you know what I mean? So you don't want to have researchers eavesdropping on your conversations.
Yes.
As a person who studies language, and communication, I would love to see how people are talking when they're just talking with each other instead of like a researcher or a therapist. But it's not really my business.
Fair enough. I just think that if brain injured people were listening to brain injured people more so, they would see how clear these kinds of problems are. And yeah, you can.
Anytime you want to record a support group with everyone's permission and share it, I'm very happy. I'm very happy to get insights from people in the group.
Thanks. Yeah. So does anyone have any questions? Because I don't know how many more slides you have, but you have gone over a lot.
I'm done.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's interesting to see what feedback those people will give you. Anyone have any other questions? No worries.
So quiet after all those questions on the studies.
Yeah.
No questions on the apps.
I'm just thinking about the apps. But yeah, this was a great conversation. The social media thing is just knowing what others are thinking about. That's a difficult thing to ask somebody after a brain injury. Like,
yeah. I think so. Two big things happened in the course of our doing this study, which is it's the nature of the digital world, is that it changes really fast. So the first big thing was we literally got the grant and then Facebook was in court. And Mark Zuckerberg was in court and everyone hated Facebook, and we were like, great, we just wrote this grant and got this money to develop these extensions, and now Facebook's in the news for all bad reasons.
Right. And that's after my brain, I was an attorney before my brain injury over 5 years ago. So like the new timetable I work on is completely different. I know that the injuries we have with like the social problems we have for making the world more accessible to people who've had brain injuries, it has so many different people's timetables to run, and then people really don't like to share knowledge with others when it comes to specific reasons, and I don't know, that scares me, so I just turn back into my cave, and that's why I'm isolated.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of figure that out. Like, what do I want to share, or what do I want other people to share? I think that, and the other big thing that happened was obviously ChatGPT. So we're using this sentiment analyzer that was built on, I don't know what, but not a large language model like ChatGPT. So I think if we were starting from scratch today, it would probably be different programs. I'm not on the computer side, but like you mentioned, Nick, like you could probably say in ChatGPT, write me an email that's a really positive message for someone who I want to congratulate on something they did at work, and then ChatGPT would just write it for you, and you could copy and paste it straight into Facebook.
It's like when I had speech therapy, it was always about trying to relearn how language works. And I talk gibberish into it a lot of times, like trying to get the sentiment out and expressed and help it communicate with me in dialogue to flesh out what I meant to say. And like that's like 15, 20 minutes with just me talking to the other the bot that doesn't have sentience.
Oh,
But I was a philosopher major before I was an attorney, and
oh gosh.
I know I could talk for days.
Can I say something about although this is not the application with which you were just explaining how ChatGPT that being around changed what you would have used for that software or AI or whatever you want to call it. I think that ChatGPT referencing a lot of what is out there, it's always making something from what is already present. And with brain injury, I don't think that what we're dealing with is out there, so I don't think it's useful. And that's been my
Oh,
view of writing about this stuff because as I write about it, people are like, why don't you use ChatGPT? And I tried it a few times and it was helpful to see what not to write because it was like this doesn't fit. Brain injury is different, and it doesn't mean I can write it yet. But I've been working on explaining the scenarios that happen with brain injury, the loss of capacity, the changes in us, and it's. So I don't know if ChatGPT would have helped or not.
It can, to be fair, if you can get your wife to take all your notes down and put them in a JSON L, you can put that in the.
I don't want my wife to see the mess of my notes in my room. That's a different issue. Nick and I talk about this
it's
stuff a lot. Um, sorry, yeah.
it's a great point though from what you're both saying. It's just a fantastic point, which is it's going by what's out there, and what's out there isn't what you're thinking. But on the other hand, if you write down a bunch of what you're thinking, it will organize it into a way that might be more understandable. I asked it for an introductory paragraph to an article on brain injury, and it actually quoted me back at myself. It's like Turkstra et al. I'm like, that is not who I want to be quoting.
Turkstra, McKay, Turkstra.
Yeah, right. I was like, I pretty much already wrote that. I don't need you to tell me again.
Oh,
Well,
I have that. I built a program that takes old papers I wrote before my brain injury that I don't remember, and it takes a little bit of it, sends it to OpenAI to read it back to me, and emails it to me, so I get a daily
Wow.
email that like helps me remind who I am. This is who I am. It's me. And I look in the mirror, becoming who I am.
and
I love that. That is fantastic.
there was a question earlier about the see pictures of yourself before your brain injury, the person you were versus the person after. The next talk is gonna be from a lab. I have another document from that lab, and it's called the Where Is I? And she's gonna be presenting research on the brain regions, the precuneus that they think is underlying the inner self. And
Hmm.
I think that when you have that injured, that creates a problem in you or a issue that is not a loss of identity. It's a loss of something very much deeper. I know I've been through it, and I know Nick has, and I think that I don't know, having the software out there, the social media out there, be aware of that as a real big issue that people can have is really important. Um, because it's not like other identity problems per se.
That sounds fascinating, that talk. I saw that on your schedule.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they have some really cool data out there, more about bodily self, but it's still within the same brain region. And
Mhm.
I like how it kind of gives it helps to shed light on thinking about the brain regions, what they do, how they work, how they're so interconnected, but still have little specific parts that seem to do specific functions. And the interconnectivity of them is a major issue that is often not talked about enough. 'Cause I
Yeah.
don't think you need to injure that brain region to still have that capacity be changed.
Right, since it's connected to other things.
Yeah, and it's super connected, and the interconnectivity of it has a affects its functionality on its own. Like you can have memory problems without injuring your hippocampus. How do you make sense of that? It's because the hippocampus gets
Right.
so much input from so many other places. When it's not working, it really isn't working.
Right. This is when I
Yeah,
have to use an analogy where you're talking about hardware and then
Yeah,
you're
right.
running on the software and
yeah.
your databases.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
Uh,
I pray.
Thank you, Lynn. And does anyone else have any other questions? 'Cause otherwise, I think we'll call this a session. But this has been very informative, and thanks for showing that data. I actually want to get that. Or it's not available yet, right? The toolkit that you just described.
No, not
Okay.
yet.
I'd like to get it once it is.
I'll keep that a note about that, Dan. I don't know. I mean, we'll see AI's moving so fast. I kind of wonder if it's going to be obsolete, you know, in the next year. So, but anyway, I'll keep you posted. Thanks so much for inviting me.
We're the ones that stuck with Facebook. We're not going to all these other obsolete or things that will make it obsolete. Like, I'd rather just see pictures, make comments, like or not, and that's it. You know?
Yeah.
Huh. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody.